And if I told you that Lewis Hamilton, the most laureate pilot in history, could never return to the podium with Ferrari? What if this was not just a bad start, but the beginning of the end? Stay, because what is happening with the 7-time world champion is not just a matter of performance. It is an emotional, technical, and political puzzle that can redefine its legacy. After 14 races in the 2025 season, the panorama is bleak. Hamilton has not achieved a single appearance on the podium. His best result has arrived in a sprint race in China, where he showed flashes of his enormous capacity, but has never managed to transform that partial performance into consistent results during a grand prize. Every Sunday it seems to be a repetition of the previous one. Insufficient rhythm, unconflainized strategy, and a car that does not respond. It is a challenged symphony between pilot and machine. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc, his teammate, has managed to consolidate as Ferrari's internal reference. It accumulates 5 podiums, has scored solidly and constantly, and above all, has kept calm in situations where Hamilton has come down. The difference in points between the two is overwhelming. More than 40 units separate Monegasco from the British. And although both conduct the same SF25, the difference in sensations is abysmal. The emotional blow that Hamilton has received is a magnitude rarely seen in a champion of his size. He has recognized it. After the Hungarian Grand Prix, he described his performance as absolutely useless, and even publicly suggests that Ferrari should consider the possibility of looking for another pilot. It is not common to see a 7-times champion by launching such a statement, and that only confirms the level of frustration that drags. These words not only fed headlines. They lit alarms within the team, they removed social networks, divided the tifosi, and opened the door to an argument that seemed impossible only a few months ago. Is Hamilton considering an early retreat? Although neither the team nor the Lewis themselves have formalized any intention of immediate rupture, the signals are undeniable. Morality is touched, eroded trust, and climate in the paddock is increasingly heavy. Rumors about internal tensions and conflicts in the technical direction do not help, and although Maranello insists that total support will be given, doubts about a possible extension of their contract are already a habitual conversation between experts and specialized media. The most dramatic thing is that it is not a punctual downturn. There are no injuries or obvious errors of piloting or lack of motivation. It is something deeper. It is the bewilderment of a pilot accustomed to understanding every detail of his car, and today is completely out of synchrony with him. He is a champion in foreign land, trying to translate a technical language that is unknown. And that is one of the worst sensations that a Formula One pilot can have. Ferrari promised him a winning platform. He came convinced that he could lead a red revolution. But today the only thing that leads are doubts. And each grand prize that happens without concrete advances reinforces the feeling that we are witnessing more than a bad streak. We are seeing, perhaps, the principle of the outcome of one of the most ambitious stories of modern F1. Ferrari sold the SF25 as a blank project, a blank car developed with the intention of avoiding the conceptual errors of its predecessor. And it was not a simple marketing slogan. From the initial sketches, the car was designed to adapt to the new efficient aerodynamic requirements, allowing progressive development throughout the year. One of the most prominent innovations was the change to the pull-rod-type front suspension system, a technical architecture that theoretically offers advantages in the airflow towards the flat bottom and greater freedom to manage the roke of the car. On paper, the SF25 had all the elements to compete. But in practice, this machine has proven to be as complex as unpredictable. The rear axle is its largest Achilles heel. Inconsistent, difficult to control in slow curves, and sensitive to aerodynamic load changes. Even with the evolution introduced in Spa and Hungary focused on a new rear suspension system and a partial redesign of the diffuser, the advances have been marginal, at least for Hamilton. For Leclerc, the improvements have allowed a more progressive driving, but Hamilton seems to go up in each curve. Here enters a factor that many overlooks: the technical adaptation process. Lewis has been building its pilot style more than a decade, depending on the particularities of Mercedes. Each movement, each braking, each balance adjustment was designed for a radically different car. And although it was expected that with his experience he could adapt to Ferrari quickly, reality has been opposed. It has had to unlearn deeply rooted habits. He has tried to migrate to a more compatible style with the demands of the SF25, even copying aspects of the Leclerc approach, such as the early use of the brake or the management of weight transfer, but the results have been inconsistent. Ferrari's promises have not been completely empty. Technically, the car has resources to evolve. There are still several updates scheduled for the second half of the season, including modifications in the hydraulic direction, new soil settings and possible changes in the engine mapping. Hamilton has been an active part in this process. He has sent complete technical reports, has demanded additional simulator sessions, and has proposed structural settings for the design of 2026. Even in the middle of chaos, his commitment to the project remains firm. But all this clashes with an awkward truth. Lewis has not yet managed to make click with the SF-25. And without that fundamental connection between man and machine, no data, no simulation, and no evolution will be sufficient. Because at the end of the day, what is needed to compete for victories is much more than a promising car. It is trust, it is intuition, it is harmony between pilot and tool. That is what Hamilton does not have today. And while the calendar advances, every lost weekend becomes a heavier slab about its ambition for redemption. The most disturbing thing in this whole story is not what is seen on the track. It is what is happening outside it. Because Hamilton's discrete performance could be explained with numbers, partial back, telemetry comparisons. But what is beginning to surround the British is a tense environment, loaded with suspicions, internal disappointments, and strategic decisions that could change the course of his career. Hamilton's arrival altered many traditional dynamics. The team, historically structured around a very Italian hierarchy and based on continuity with Leclerc, had to open space for a gigantic figure. At first, that generated enthusiasm. But with the passing of the months, that figure has become an uncomfortable presence for some sectors of the team. Hamilton has assumed a role beyond the simple pilot. He has sent his own technical reports to the engineering department, suggesting changes not only in the current SF-25 configuration, but also in the 2026 car project. It has even come to propose adjustments in the organizational structure of the equipment, in areas such as simulator management, aerodynamic analysis, and track mechanics formation. In any other team, these actions would be seen as a leadership sample. In Ferrari, where internal policy is as old as its legacy, this direct intervention has raised eyebrows. Rumors of friction have not been long in coming. Some Italian media have talked about tensions with the Leclerc environment, particularly because of the influence that Hamilton is trying to exert on the technical direction. Although officially maintains a unity speech, internal sources point out that not all in Maranello are willing to accept the level of prominence that Hamilton demands, especially when the results do not support it. And here the great dilemma appears. To what extent is Ferrari willing to bet on Hamilton as the central figure of his project? The contract they signed is clear: minimum 2 seasons with option to a third. But in the current Formula One, where the success cycles are short and the expectations are measured in tenths by return, time is a luxury that very few can afford. If the results do not arrive after the summer pause, external and internal pressures could force drastic decisions. The possibility of an early exit is no longer a taboo. It has begun to speculate whether Ferrari would be willing to release it at the end of the year or even before if the tensions continue to climb. On the side of Hamilton, there are no clear signs that he wants to abandon, but his body language, his statements to the press, and his emotional state reflect unusual wear on him. He has even suggested that perhaps this cycle is not the one who dreamed, a phrase that, coming from someone like Lewis, has an immense symbolic weight. And while the team has publicly reaffirmed its support, trust between the parties seems to have begun to erode. It is not an open conflict, but a progressive cooling of uncomfortable silences in the briefings, of looks that no longer cross the same in the paddock. It is the prelude to a break that, if it is not handled intelligently, can explode at any time. But beyond contracts, data, and rumors, which is truly at stake here is the legacy of a legend. Because Hamilton is not fighting just for points. He is trying to show that he can still lead a complex project, which does not need an environment like Mercedes to be competitive, which still has energy and clarity to transform a historical team. What is at stake is not just one more season. What is being eroded little by little is the story of a pilot who has built his legend with precise decisions, with absolute dominance of his tools, with a perfect relationship between talent and control. In Ferrari, that relationship is broken. The car does not respond, the environment doubts, the partner surpasses him, and his own learning process has not been as fast as he believed. Because as much as he tries, no matter how much experience he accumulates, Lewis is facing a car that has not been designed for him, and a team that at times seems to have lost faith. And this is where the story becomes more human, more real, more transcendent. Because this is not just the story of a rebel car or a team that finds no course. It is the story of a man who is trying to reinvent himself at age 40. Of a multi-champion that does not want to be a commemorative statue of the past, but an active protagonist of the present. And that requires a level of courage, vulnerability, and resistance that few can even imagine. The answer, as always, will have the track, but also time. Because in Formula One, even the biggest ones have to fight for every second, even when they have already won everything.